Hello everyone, welcome back with another video where revenge is so spicy. So sit back and let me take you into the story.
"Get out," she said, laughing like it was a joke that had taken years to prepare. The sound echoed through the hallway, the same hallway where my father used to call me his strong girl every morning before work. "My name is Evelyn Carter, I'm 34. Have you ever watched your own family erase you, like you were never part of the story to begin with?" My stepmother stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame, the other gripping a folder like it gave her power. She smirked, tilting her head just enough to make it clear. This wasn't anger. This was enjoyment. "You were never in the will," she said again, slower this time, like I was too stupid to understand the first time. Behind her, my younger sister leaned against the wall, arms crossed. She didn't even try to hide it. She laughed, a soft, mocking sound that stung more than the words. "You were always the failure," she added, eyes scanning me like I didn't belong in that house anymore. The house felt different. Quiet. Hollow. Even the old armchair in the corner looked like it was waiting for someone else now. I didn't argue. Didn't cry. I just picked up my bag, walked past them and stepped into the cold air, realizing for the first time that sometimes silence is the only thing they don't expect. The cold air hit my face, but I didn't stop walking. Behind me, the door shut with a soft click, like the house itself had agreed with them. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, my fingers tightening around the strap of my bag. Everything I owned was inside it. 34 years of existence, reduced to something I could carry on one shoulder. Across the street, Mrs. Daly's porch light flickered on. Her curtain moved slightly. People always watched when something ugly happened, but no one ever stepped in. "Evie," my sister called from inside, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Don't forget to forward your mail." Then she laughed again. I kept walking. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because I didn't know where to go, but because I knew exactly why this was happening. 3 weeks. That's how long it had been since my father's funeral. 3 weeks since my stepmother cried into expensive tissues, clinging to guests like she had lost everything, while quietly locking drawers, changing passwords and handling the paperwork. I remembered the day after the funeral. She had sat at the dining table, that same folder in front of her, tapping it slowly. "You won't need to worry about finances anymore," she had said, smiling too tightly. At the time I thought she meant she would help. I didn't realize she meant I was already cut off. That night I checked my bank account. Every single joint account my father had set up for me, gone. And when I tried to call the bank, they told me something that didn't make sense back then. The primary holder made changes before his passing. I stopped walking. Because that wasn't true. My father would never have done that. Which meant someone else did. And suddenly the silence I chose that night didn't feel like weakness anymore. It felt like the beginning of something they would never see coming. It felt like the beginning of something they would never see coming. I didn't go to a friend's house. Didn't call anyone. Instead, I checked into a small motel off Route 9, the kind with dim yellow lights and a front desk clerk who didn't ask questions. The room smelled faintly of bleach and something older, like forgotten stories. I sat on the edge of the bed, my bag still on my shoulder. Then slowly I reached inside and pulled out the only thing I had taken from that house without thinking. My father's old watch. It was scratched, heavy and slightly too big for my wrist. But when I held it, something steadied inside me. Like his voice was still somewhere, just quieter now. "Always check twice, Evie," he used to say. So I did. The next morning I went straight to the bank. The same woman from before recognized me. Her smile was polite, but careful. "I already explained." "I know what you said," I cut in, keeping my voice calm. "Now I want to see it." There was a pause. A longer one this time. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before she finally nodded. Minutes later she turned the screen slightly toward me. "There were changes made," she said slowly. 3 days before your father passed." My stomach tightened. "Authorized by him?" I asked. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "The signature doesn't fully match previous records." The room went quiet. Even the faint ticking of the wall clock sounded louder. I looked down at my father's watch in my hand. Tick, tick, tick. And for the first time since they threw me out, I didn't feel lost. I felt certain. Because this wasn't grief anymore. This was theft. And someone in that house thought they got away with it. And someone in that house thought they got away with it. I slid the watch back onto my wrist and looked up at the bank clerk. Print everything, I said quietly. She studied my face for a second, then nodded. The papers came out one by one. Transaction logs, authorization forms, signature copies. Cold official proof. But it was the dates that made my chest tighten. 3 days before he died. My father couldn't even hold a pen properly that week. I remembered feeding him soup, his hands trembling slightly, his voice soft but steady. "Don't let anyone rush you with paperwork," he had whispered. At the time I thought he meant bills. Now it sounded like a warning. "Was anyone else present when this was signed?" I asked. The clerk checked the notes. "There's a witness listed." "Who?" Another pause. Then she turned the paper toward me. "My sister's name." I let out a slow breath, but my hands didn't shake. Not anymore. Because it wasn't just suspicion now. It was a pattern. A plan. That same afternoon I walked into a quiet office building downtown. No drama. No announcement. Just a name on the glass door. Legal Services. Inside, a man in his late 50s listened without interrupting, his fingers steepled under his chin. When I finished, he leaned back slightly. "You're not here to ask if this is wrong," he said. "No," I replied calmly. "I'm here to prove it." For the first time since everything collapsed, someone didn't look at me with pity. He gave a small nod. "Good," he said. "Because if what you're saying is accurate, this isn't just a family dispute." He tapped the documents lightly. "This is fraud." The word didn't shock me. It settled. Heavy. Final. And as I walked out of that office, the city noise felt different somehow. Sharper, clearer. Because 3 weeks from now, on my father's birthday, we were all going to sit at the same table again. And this time, I wouldn't be the one leaving. And this time, I wouldn't be the one leaving. The days that followed were quiet, almost unnaturally so. No calls. No messages. Like I had already been erased. I stayed in that same motel, the ticking of my father's watch becoming the only steady thing in my life. Morning, night, it didn't matter. It reminded me that time was still moving, even if everything else felt paused. My lawyer didn't rush. Neither did I. We built it slowly. Bank records. Signature analysis. Witness statements. And then, something unexpected. "There's a trust fund tied to your name," he said one afternoon, sliding another document across the table. I frowned. "That's not possible." "It is," he replied calmly. "But it was redirected." Redirected. The word felt colder than fraud. "Where?" I asked. He looked at me carefully before answering. "Into an account controlled by your stepmother." For a moment I just stared at the paper. Then I laughed. Soft. Disbelieving. Not because it was funny, but because it was so calculated. Every detail. Every move. Even my future had been quietly taken before I realized I was losing anything at all. "There's more," he added. I looked up. The redirection required 2 approvals. I already knew the answer. But I asked anyway. "Who signed it?" He didn't soften it. "Your stepmother, and your sister." The room went silent. Not heavy. Not painful. Just empty. Like something inside me had finally stopped expecting anything better from them. That night I didn't cry. Didn't break. I just sat there holding my father's watch, listening to it tick. And for the first time I understood something clearly. They didn't just want me gone. They wanted me powerless. Forgotten. But 3 weeks were over now. Tomorrow was his birthday dinner. And they had no idea. I was already invited. Tomorrow was his birthday dinner. I didn't sleep that night. The motel room felt too small, the shadows too close. Every creak of the old plumbing sounded like whispers plotting against me. I kept my father's watch in my hand, feeling its weight, feeling the seconds line up like soldiers waiting for orders. Morning came. I dressed carefully. Nothing flashy, nothing to betray intention. Just calm. Collected. They had made the mistake of thinking I would crumble in anger or show up with tears in my eyes. But I wasn't the little girl they kicked out anymore. I was a quiet storm. The drive to the house was silent. The streets were waking up, but in my mind the world slowed down. Every turn, every stoplight, every pedestrian was a note in the symphony I was about to conduct. When I arrived, the door opened before I even knocked. My stepmother's smile was rehearsed, brittle, like it could shatter if I looked at it wrong. Behind her, my sister leaned against the wall again. Same smirk, same confidence. "Evelyn," she said, voice sweet but sharp. "I didn't expect you so early." I stepped inside, unshaken. The hallway smelled like fresh flowers, expensive wine, and betrayal. I nodded slightly as if the air between us were nothing. And then I handed over the envelope. A simple, white envelope. "Your bank will call soon," I said softly, letting the weight of my words settle like dust. They glanced at it, then back at each other. Confusion. Fear. Denial. I smiled quiet. Calm. Because this wasn't about yelling. It wasn't about confrontation. It was about proof. And sometimes, silence speaks louder than screams. It was the smallest sound that gave them away. The soft ping of my phone on the table. A message. From the bank. "Read receipt, delivered." I watched them freeze. My stepmother's smile wavered. My sister's smirk faltered. Both glanced at the envelope again, then at each other as if hoping the evidence would magically disappear. 3 weeks of careful planning, I murmured under my breath, almost to myself. But loud enough for them to hear. "And yet, you forgot one thing." They waited. Heartbeats stretched long and thin. "You underestimated me." My stepmother's hands trembled slightly, clutching the back of a chair. My sister shifted, eyes darting as if looking for an escape route that didn't exist. The house felt smaller suddenly. The walls closed in with the weight of all the lies, the stolen money, the hidden signatures, the long months of betrayal. Every picture of my father on the walls stared back at them, accusing, patient, watching. I took a step closer, careful, measured, letting my presence fill the space. "You thought I'd disappear," I said softly, watching their reactions. "You thought I'd vanish without a fight." Then I tilted my head, eyes locked on both of them. "But justice doesn't shout," I whispered. "It arrives quietly, unexpectedly, and leaves nothing behind but truth." They didn't know it yet. Not fully. But by the end of the evening, they would. And as I let that silence linger, I realized something profound. Revenge wasn't about shouting. It was about reclaiming every ounce of dignity they tried to steal. By the time the candles flickered on the birthday cake, the room had shifted. Not with anger, not with chaos, but with realization. My stepmother's hands hovered over her glass, unsteady. My sister's gaze darted to every face, every corner, searching for an ally that wasn't there. The room smelled of roasted chicken, wine, and the tension of lies unraveling. I smiled softly, holding my father's watch lightly in my palm beneath the table. Tick, 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 each second marking what they had done and what they could no longer undo. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said, my voice calm, measured, carrying just enough warmth to make them ache. The doorbell rang. I didn't need to move. They both stiffened instantly. 2 men walked in, badges glinting under the chandelier light. Their eyes locked on my stepmother and sister immediately, hands shaking slightly as the words came. "We're here regarding the trust fund fraud." The air froze. Faces went pale. Breaths caught. The confident smirks, the mocking laughs, they all crumbled in silence. I took a deep breath, letting the moment stretch, letting justice arrive quietly. No shouting. No violence. Just truth. For the first time I sat back, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. My father's birthday had become a reckoning, but in the most poetic, precise way. They had tried to erase me. But in their place, I was the only one who remained. Calm, collected, unbroken. The watch ticked steadily against my wrist, a reminder that time, like truth, always finds its way. And in that quiet final moment I smiled.